Hi, it's Locke here, Locke Branning, also known as the Lady Odin. And if you follow me, you know exactly why I have that title. I want to try something new here. I have a number of people contacting me via email in response to messages that I send out. But the emails are coming in quite thick and fast. So it's getting to the point now where it's challenging to manage writing replies. So I'm going to try something new by making these audios and putting a bit of visual to it and then loading them up to YouTube. And then this way, others can benefit from the questions that are posed or the talking points that are raised, because I enjoy having conversations with people and responding to queries. So I'm going to start off with Patricia's emails now. Patricia has a couple of emails that I need to respond to, and they're quite detailed, so it deserves a bit of attention, or Patricia's messages deserve a bit of attention. And the first email that I need to respond to from Patricia relates to a message that I send out to all my subscribers, and it's about being grounded in your own weirdness, in your own eccentricities, but without a way that's too in your face to the people around you who may not know your real self. Okay, so it's trying to reconcile the inner authenticity with your expression of your life without raising too much resistance in the people around you. Okay, so it's just trying to smooth out that inner and outer world in a way that still feels good for you, but is also comfortable for the people around you. Okay, because we are social creatures. You don't want to necessarily get a certain reputation, maybe not in the early stages of your journey. As you develop, as you strengthen, certainly, okay, stand stronger in your weirdness. But in the beginning, not necessarily. Or, as is in my case, I live multiple realities. Have the Lady Odin reality, which is where my soul soars. That is the one that excites me to my very cells of my body. But I also live in a community, a rather conservative community, where I do a lot of social connection work, and I am involved with making things happen locally. But for that, I need a certain amount of conservative credibility. Okay, I mean, some people know how strange I am, but as a rule, okay, I'd rather stand on my reputation with what I've accomplished locally without people then taking me to account about my not alternative reality, but my complementary reality. Because they're not alternative, they're not really flipping from one to the other. They're just more like, when you get a cut stone, a crystal or diamond or gemstone, when the light hits it a certain way, certain things are highlighted. But when another light hits at a different aspect, different things are highlighted. Okay, so I still feel quite integrated, but I have different purposes with my different realities. And many of you will probably find yourself in very similar situations. And so in my original email, I describe how I have the interior of my living space set up in a way that feels great for me to settle into, but also if I have visitors, that they can observe without necessarily judging. Okay, so that's the background. So Patricia talks about how she's always liked crystals and that she can use them as tools in her meditations and in her dreams. She also has little clusters of crystals decorating little pockets of her home. Now she talks about how the house that she's living in, the landlord has decided he wants to sell the house and has asked Patricia to be available for showings for when the real estate agent brings potential buyers around. And she writes that she has a couple of paintings on her wall with symbols of protection. And when people come around, she doesn't consider removing them, but she also doesn't explain them. So they're just there, okay? People are entitled to decorate how they want, which is a good way to approach it, okay? You don't explain, you don't defend, and unless somebody actually raises a question, you've got nothing to answer to. But then Patricia goes off on a tangent. She talks about how her landlord isn't the most trustworthy person, and this concerns her a little bit. She's made a great deal of effort to avoid being around people like this, and now it's just beginning to get under her skin. It makes her a little bit reactive, a little bit tense, but she's also a bit cautious because she knows that she can add fuel to the fire of the contentiousness, of the prickliness of the situation. So I want to comment a little bit about the dishonesty of people or people who stress you out. Okay, this will be a bit of a generalized response. But I found it very useful to become aware that people, by and large, want to be good, want to be liked, want to have respect, but the way they go about it is just very clumsy. Emotional clumsiness seems to be the default setting in the personalities of most people. And that's because that's what we've been taught. That's what we've been programmed in. And certainly with the role models that we have, emotional clumsiness is modeled all around us. We all want to be loved. We all want to be well regarded. We all want to be authentic. But how we go about getting those needs met is full of game playing, of maneuvers, of overthinking. Emotional elegance is what I call the opposite of emotional clumsiness. Most people just simply don't know emotional elegance. So that's something that I'll be talking about as we go forward with these audios, videos, whatever. But I want to say that emotional elegance starts with you. Whatever the external details are of your individual life, how they vary from person to person. But internally, that center of the storm of your life, there are commonalities that can ground you, that can raise you. Okay, that's a nice balance, is to be grounded but also expanded. Okay, I'm trying to think in a kaleidoscopic way of getting the ideas from my head into your head, and sometimes words get in the way. Forgive people their emotional clumsiness. And it's almost by that compassion, because you are raising then that compassion within yourself rather than judgment. You are lifting yourself. You are also grounding yourself in your truth, in the higher truth, in the moving forward and upward of life. And then Patricia goes on to write about an issue that raises the subject of betrayal. And it's in a love situation. So she makes a couple of comments about her reality, her recent events that have come into her life. This is almost an endemic issue that's relevant for almost everybody that I'm encountering. This issue of betrayal. And I want to take a few moments to talk about this. What is betrayal? Okay, it's kind of like commerce. You do something for someone and you expect something back, and either it doesn't come or it doesn't come in the way that you thought it should come. You come from the idea that people owe you something. Okay, now let's specifically talk about romantic situations or situations of the heart. And yeah, male, female, or partner to partner, significant you and significant other. Okay, the one that you bring into that special place of your heart, of the soulmate, I guess. Have you ever noticed how people are willing to take the most extraordinary physical risks? I have people on my subscriber base who do parkour, take amazing photos of ridiculously high buildings where they're perched on the edge. The views are magnificent, but they clearly trust their competencies physically. People go bungee jumping, they go parachuting, they drive really fast. Speed is a popular adrenaline rush. But these same people, they will often say they won't fall in love again because it hurts too much when it doesn't succeed, when the relationship falls apart. They would rather risk injury to life and limb rather than have their heart broken again. So what is it about the sensitivity of the heart? And this is where betrayal strikes, because a failed relationship feels like a betrayal. And people aren't willing to risk anymore. And this feeds back into that emotional clumsiness that I was talking about earlier. Okay, it shows that there are still areas where we need to grow, where we need to strengthen, where we need to lift, where we need to expand. A bit of self-revelation here. When I was a young woman, I was very emotionally clumsy, particularly when it came to relationships, but not only in that area. I was, like most of us, I was a very awkward young woman, young person, young adult. But after a series of incidents where I almost reset my life, where I almost committed to my next incarnation, I had a massive awakening. And there were a number of people and a number of situations closely following together that kind of precipitated this. So it wasn't a single pivoting incident. It was like oh, my guardian angels ganged up on me and not attacked me, but intervened from a whole lot of different directions. But anyway, so from my early 20s, I have walked this talk that I'm going to share with you here. So I've got decades of history and experience to be able to promise you that this stuff works. Okay, so the betrayal, the broken promises, the commitments not followed through, and many of these were not spoken, many of these are not committed to paper. They're kind of just expected or presumed. Okay, you do something and you presume this is what you're going to get out of it. So it's classic. It's the classic what's in it for me scenario. And when you don't get what it is that you're expecting, that you're fantasizing about, you risk falling off the edge of an emotional cliff and just crashing. But whose problem is this? It's kind of a bit cold, isn't it? Let's say, whose responsibility is it to heal from this situation? So we've got a number of issues going on, okay? And they're all under your control. So regardless of the behavior of other people, because remember, they'll be emotionally clumsy, almost guaranteed. The way they go about getting their needs met is probably normal with quotation marks around it, because normal is not a good place to be. Most normal people are unhappy. Most normal people are emotionally clumsy. So normal is not a good baseline. Okay, forget normal. But the people that you're dealing with will most likely be emotionally clumsy, and they'll be normal. Okay, absolutely. But with you wanting to expand and lift yourself up and to ground yourself more in your authenticity, it will be you who is stepping away from normal. Okay, so, and that is a lonely place. Can be an uncomfortable place, but I'm here to hold your feet to the fire to make sure that you keep moving in that direction. Because when you move in that direction, when more people move in that direction, you are lifting that baseline of normal. Okay, so here you are. You are becoming more expanded in your perceptions, but you're still dealing with so-called normal people. And even people who may be like you, who are raising and expanding themselves, they might have a different energetic profile to you. So they might be more advanced in, say, life purpose than you might be, or you might be more expanded in financial abundance issues than the other person. So this is what I mean about your energetic profiles might be different. They might be complementary, or they might be antagonistic. They might rub each other in ways that causes friction. But, okay, the issue that I'm talking about is betrayal and emotional clumsiness and matters of the heart. Okay, they all kind of weave together. And this is where the idea, the Eastern idea of detachment can really come into its own. And I'm hesitating because what I'm going to say is qualified. Okay, it may not be relevant to everybody. And this is the challenge that I personally have, is that with my particular make-up profile, Okay, I'm a Pisces with lots of Aquarian elements, and I'm also an ENTP in the personality profile of the Myers-Briggs assessment. And that makes for a very broad visioning kind of character. So I have the blessing, I have the curse to be able to see things from every perspective. And it's really hard to pin my opinions down when there's too many unknown quantities. It's very hard to give generalized information where I'm not also giving a lot of qualifications, where I'm not also giving a lot of, it depends. It depends on this, it depends on that. All right, so now that you know this weakness of mine, or this challenge of mine, okay, I'm going to continue talking about detachment, even though I know that, excuse me, even though I know that for some of you this will be easier than it will be for others. For some of you, unless I know your circumstances, I may not be able to address it in this situation or in this time. But, okay, the key is detachment. About your expectations. Number one, it's always about what you're expecting, what you're fantasizing. It generates from you. Okay, that every encounter that you have with a significant other or a potential significant other, it's filtered. It's filtered through your expectations. But if you don't have expectations, then you can't be disappointed. You can be delighted when your expectations are met. But if they're not met, then at least you're not plunging off that emotional cliff. Now, there's much more that I can say about romantic relationships and betrayal, but that would... I could wax lyrical for hours about this, but in the interest of brevity and moving on, so I can respond, then I'll save it for another time. But in closing about the betrayal and this romance issue, if you hold yourself back, if you only give a small part of yourself because you expect to be betrayed, you're not really... Are you being authentic to yourself? Love strongly, but love lightly. Okay, this has been a motto that I have taken with me from my early 20s when I had that major intervention, spiritual intervention. That's how I moved forward. Love strongly, but love lightly. Okay, there's that saying, if you love someone, set them free. If they come back to you, then they're yours. So that's an aspect that's woven into the love strongly, love lightly. You want to live your life in a way that when you come to the end of it and there's that life review, that you can be proud. You can hold your head up high over the way that you have conducted yourself in relationships, and particularly in relationship to yourself, to what you know you are capable of being. I mean, that in the end is the most central, permanent, solid relationship you will ever have in your life. You begin this journey alone, you finish it alone. And the companions that you have along the way, there are no guarantees. No way can you have certainty over what's ahead on your path together. And The paths may diverge after a few weeks. The paths may diverge after a few years, after a few decades. And it might be any number of reasons why they diverge. There might be as a result of conflict, disagreements, or they might be a result of circumstances beyond anyone's control. Okay, but do you want to hold yourself back? Do you want to keep yourself small? Do you want to keep yourself emotionally cramped while you're on that journey together? Okay, so I'm going to finish this here, this aspect of Patricia's email. There's another email that's following that's also relevant to Patricia, and I'll comment on that on another video, audio, or whatever. Okay, ciao. Or cheers.